Good evening, and welcome to the June 29th reading associated with the 2021 Conference on Poetry and Teaching at the Frost Place. I'm Kerrin McCadden, Associate Director at the Conference on Poetry and Teaching at the Frost Place. We are coming to you virtually this year, but are planning to be back at our beloved conference home at the Frost Place in Franconia, New Hampshire in 2022. Tonight, we have the pleasure of bringing you poet Dawn Potter, who will be reading. And tomorrow night, if you tune in at the same time, you'll have the pleasure of hearing from our writing intensive faculty member, Teresa Carson. It is my pleasure to introduce Dawn Potter. Dawn Potter is the author of 9 books of prose and poetry, most recently the poetry collection, Accidental Hymn, forthcoming next year. A finalist for the 2020 National Poetry Series, she has published poems and essays in the Beloit Poetry Journal, the Sewanee Review, the Threepenny Review, the Times Literary Supplement, and many other journals in the United States and abroad. Dawn directs the Frost Place Conference on Poetry and Teaching, as well as the high school writing program at Monson Arts. When not teaching, she works as a manuscript consultant and as a freelance editor for literary and academic presses. She lives in Portland, Maine. Please join me in welcoming Dawn Potter.
Thank you, Kerrin. Thank you so much. It's just been a delight to be with the participants, with Kerrin, with Madel, all week, and it's a joy, as always, and a privilege to read before this group. One of the odd things about running a conference is that I get to do a reading for the Frost Place every year, and so the participants tend to hear a lot of poems that are in process that later get into books, and so it's always fun to give, and nerve-wracking also to try out new things, which is what I'm going to do a lot of tonight. One of the conversations we've had during the conference has focused around how our writing changed during the pandemic is one thing, and also some really close considerations of how what we read and how we read affect not only our final drafts, but our drafts in process. And so I wanted to bring in some fairly new work that has kind of a pattern of that. I want to start off with a piece that has been in the works for years and years, but it was an essay, like a really pretty serious essay. It was like 10 pages long. And one thing I did during the pandemic was just completely transform this essay into a poem. I have a really strong interest in the history of women's work, particularly housework. And so this poem arises from quite a bit of research, a lot of it from this book, which seems to be coming backwards on your screen, but it's called Never Done, A History of American Housework by Susan Strasser. A history of wash day. Sunday night, you sort the clothes, whites from greens, browns from red, and now by fabric, woolen or linen, cotton or silk, and were they smudged in the pew or fouled in the barn? Soak overnight, bucket after bucket from the dooryard pump, each pile in its own watery tub, then rest yourself, nurse a baby, darn a sock, so that on Monday, at dawn, corset pinching your lungs, you can turn your thoughts to draining your first tub, a heap of pale church attire. Lye soap glistens in an oily basin. Pour in hot suds, stove ablaze with wood lugged before daybreak, and scrub each foaming bodice against the washboard, knuckles scraped raw. Wring out the garments, rub fresh soap on stubborn filth, heave the sodden mess into the cauldron on the stove, kitchen pulsing with heat. Fill with water, bucket after bucket from the dooryard pump, and boil it up, steam thick as night. Rest, nurse a baby, fry meat for men, then dip the clothes out of the boiler, burn yourself, rub dirty spots again. Will soap supply last till butchering time? Rinse load in plain water, bucket after bucket from the dooryard pump. Wring out clothes, rinse in a tub of bluing, store-bought bottle is running low, twist dry, Then mix up a tin pan of starch water, dip each item, nurse the screaming baby, ring once more, hang clothes on the line in the dooryard till they are perfectly dry. And repeat every step on every heap of garments in this order: darker, coarser, dirtier. Life could be harder. You could live in the city, begin every work week of your life lugging gallons of water through horse shit, across glare ice, up 5 narrow flights of a tenement. Maybe you washed for 8 sloppy sons, a pair of dying incontinent parents, 5 or 6 live-in boarders, or an owner who whips you when you overlook a cherry stain. On your knees by the tub, you scrub out brick dust and urine. You line dry your sheets in a breeze thick with soot. How much coal must a woman carry? Oh, the price of coal. To keep her stove hot enough to boil a lake of wash water in a single day. What of the baby scooting across the kitchen floor? What of the laborer weighted with baskets, blinded by steam? What of the duty, monstrous, eternal? No time to pray. Tomorrow is ironing day. So that was one of my pandemic projects, was reworking some things that had been sitting around a long time and that dealt with kind of the pre-existing research gene in my head. I had recently published a book, and if I have time, I'll read a little bit from it. Chestnut Ridge came out in 2019, which is based on a lot of research about the Western Pennsylvania coalfield area. And I've got another book, manuscript in the pipeline that works with a lot of research I did around the 1860s on the Maine coast. So I tend to do that. So it was in a way predictable for me to try to find that, but there were other things that were not. And because my living situation changed up quite a bit during the pandemic, I was dealing with a lot of noise and a lot of disruption and really no steady place to work. So that was the situation that I was writing in for most of last year. But I had obligations, and one was that I was invited to write a poem for a project called, well, I'll show you the poster, Art in Common Places, which is curated by, among other people, Teresa Carson, who will be working with participants tomorrow, which is basically a painter and a poet working together to create new work. We had never met each other. She lived in Florida, I lived in Maine, and we ended up with a project based around the theme of accident. And I wrote 14 sonnets in 14 days, basically. And the first day I wrote it was the day that the Capitol was invaded. So I'm gonna read these sonnets because I think they follow a pattern of anxiety and noise and randomness, some preconceived notions that I made at the time that may not actually be true, but I think that they speak to a certain way in which, as a writer, I was desperate to keep writing and figure out how to do it. So these are accident sonnets, and there are 14 of them, and they're pretty quick. 1. So we went shopping for skates because ponds are big and we can skate with our masks off and we can breathe the air without terror. And because the sound of blades slicing ice is the ring of steel against stone, of might against might. And because we are afraid of dying and so tired, so very, very tired. 2. The sign said, it said nothing. It said nothing could save us now. Now, nothing could save us. Satan has us in his clutches. Satan has us, the sign said, in his clutches. The man holding the sign stood at the corner. He stood holding a sign that said Satan. And the cars, they did not stop. 3. Behold these images of summer pasted into the catalog I found stuck to the bottom of the recycling bin. I flip through the stained pages, but cannot recall what it feels like to be bare-armed and warm, smiling at strangers clustered on a dock at sunset, chattering about dogs and children, laughing into the eyes of a beautiful man, brushing sand from his feet, cupping his unmarked face. 4. I tried on a new linen shirt and then spilled tea on it. I put on my old clogs and staggered down the stairs. I stuffed work pants into the washing machine, but forgot to hang them up. I boiled 6 eggs and they cracked. I let the cat in and I let the cat out. 3 seagulls circled above me. Their wings cut the sky like harrows. It's one of those days when everything is tinged with blue. 5. I thought for a change I would write a happy poem, and look, here I am, writing about the conversation I just had with my son. We were talking about the cat, and we were using our special, funny, talk like the cat voices, which is a thing we do in this family. We are very committed to comic relief. And it was sweet because for like 5 minutes, we forgot to be scared. 6. I've been reading such hard books lately, Proust and Byron. It's like eating nothing but brown rice and kale. And finally today I said the hell with it and lay on the couch under a blanket and read about Lord Peter Wimsey being judgy about claret while stalking a murderer. And for some reason this was better, but why? 7. It's Saturday morning in early January in Maine, and the faraway sun is grinning behind a scrim of cloud. And I should be outside to say hello. And I meant to be outside by now. But somehow I am still sitting here on the couch, doom scrolling the news, because I've realized that half the insurrectionists look like my middle-aged cousins, and the other half look like my ex-students, like the kids my own kids went to school with. What's the right thing to do with recognition software that lives inside my own life? I am a crime. 8. In my son's room, which used to be my study until COVID made him move it back in with his parents, music is trickling from beneath the door, something sad and twangy. And I am lying on my bed trying to write poems because I don't have a room of my own anymore, don't even have a desk, don't even have a chair. And as I lie here on this mattress on the floor and watch a no sun afternoon grimace through the window, my son is lying on his mattress on his floor and trying to write a statement about why he wants to go to divinity school. And I'm thinking, why don't we have any real beds? And his music sighs under my door, like every hard answer. 9. I'm not looking out the window, but I can hear the street, the neighbor kids shrieking at each other, and now their boots pounding up and down the sidewalk. They're shooting Nerf arrows at each other again, or playing some inscrutable game involving a hula hoop and a character they call Mr. Orange. And before long, somebody's gonna be crying, and I bet that would be me. 10. 7 years ago, I lived in the woods. And 7 months ago, I was amazed by a white peony in my city garden. And 7 weeks ago, I almost caught the house on fire as I was roasting a turkey. And 7 days ago, I witnessed a semi-failed putsch in the capital of my woebegone nation. And 7 hours ago, I was lying on the floor trying to recover from an abs class. And 7 minutes ago, I had not yet written this poem. And 7 seconds ago, I thought this poem was bad. And when I was 7, I climbed into the notch of a maple tree and wondered who on this earth I could possibly be. 11. Saturday morning, and it's pouring rain in Maine where it's not supposed to rain in January. And I am sitting in a corner of my couch, squinching my mind away from bad news, trying to pretend that today will be super relaxing, so calm and productive, and probably I'll look younger also. Meanwhile, the clock ticks, and the furnace hums, and the washing machine sloshes, and the 21st century slips and slides along its dented rails. And you, what are you doing right now? Are you gazing through a window pane into the sodden dark? Are you yearning over the strangeness of love? 12. I've been dreaming lately, dreaming about birds, about watching birds scatter like spiders through the rooms of my house, dreaming that my older son is younger than my younger son, dreaming that I mistakenly married my junior prom date. And when I wake up, I am shocked. And what the hell, time? 13. 2 weeks ago, I wrote my first accident sonnet. It was the day the Yahoos stormed the Capitol and our future felt dead, and my son was watching, of all things, Coriolanus on TV. And Lord, how do we acquaint ourselves with terror? And then yesterday, one president was airlifted into oblivion and the other got to sit down at the big desk and start erasing evil. And I was too afraid to watch in case something exploded. But the only thing that exploded was relief. I felt like a milkweed pod. I felt like a busted dam. 14. And here I am again, praise singing, hot cornbread, and the poems of Keats, and the blisters on my hands, the ones that sprout after a day spent shoveling semi-frozen April soil because I am so ecstatic about spring, about the shriek of the crested woodpecker dancing from tree to tree, about the radish seeds I'm dropping into the wet black earth, about our planet rolling so swiftly on its axis. And now the man I've adored for 30 years is getting out of his pickup after a long day of hammering. And here I am again, running up to him and crying, the crocuses are up. And here he is laughing, saying, show me. So that's the 14. And it was the weirdest thing because I wrote this under, like, I would write it while Paul was like, playing music or, really loudly in the kitchen or talking about football or, or there was road construction or, whatever it was just so, it was like, I had this new thing. I had to work with noise and I had to work fast and I had to not overthink anything. And it was so not what I usually do. So I'm just going to read 2 more pieces and, this one is from my next book, Accidental Hymn, and I can't even remember if I read it last year, but it's a piece that one of the things that I think about is what are we allowed to write about, and there are some words that that we tend to reuse, that poets tend to reuse, soul and angel, and that we kind of get told not to use, and yet they're real words, they're words, the words that matter, and so I wrote a poem called Soul. And I've dedicated it to Otis Redding. Today, a bird invisible among the trees cries, Jericho, 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 oh no, all the afternoon long. The lyrics aren't yours, but I hear them in your voice, feel them lodge like a splinter in that durable cavity, my soul. A word that poets are warned to avoid, yet there it perches alongside angels and hearts, solid and alert, as true as a thorn. Long ago, when my small white son pranced around the living room in a see-through powder blue leotard, shooting wind finger at imaginary friends, he told me, when he isn't Weasel Man, he's Otis Redding. Meaning, I think, Weasel Man is fancy me, but Otis Redding is just me. I guess I'd forgotten to tell him about your green satin suits, but I remember the joy wrench of watching him step inside you. That durable cavity, the soul, I think of it sometimes, at odd times, when the man I love puts his hand between my legs, when a sharp wind lifts off the ocean. I once told the devil I'd sell him my soul if he'd give me Aretha's voice. He never got back to me. My soul must be too heavy to move, too awkward, the wrong size for his room. All these years later, I'm still dragging it uphill, like a black hole, like a magic wallet. All the time I'm waiting, just anticipating the thing I'll never, never, never possess. But this Jericho bird, invisible among the trees, I don't know its name or what it looks like. Call it a heart, an angel, a clatter of regret. Call it tenderness. There it is, singing. So I'm going to close with one poem that I know I've read at the Frost Place before, but it's Maudel always asks for it every year, so it's like an annual thing now. It's from Chestnut Ridge, and Chestnut Ridge is organized chronologically, so it starts way up in the 1600s and goes into the 2010s. And this one is dated 1979, and the title is Gołąbki, which is a kind of Polish-American, Western Pennsylvania version of how you say cabbage rolls in Polish. Gołąbki, which the ants pronounce gołąbki, you know, cabbage rolls, honey, and packed into a crock pot, pasted all over with pictures of happy brown daisies, and then balanced them on the plush back seat of a cream-colored Delta 88 bought used off the lot from a dealer that Uncle Boy played accordion with in the beer garden up to Dunbar, and drove them down nice and hot in the farmhouse for Sunday dinner, even though our mother had already slapped together a bean casserole and our father had picked 1,000 ears of corn from the garden, and we were as stuffed as rats. But the ants ignored all signs of a previous meal and said, "Oh, go ahead, you're tall, you can hide it." So we went ahead and swallowed 3 or 4 tomato-sopped, beef-stuffed, toothpick-riddled cabbage socks, because we knew that good table manners means eating every single thing old ladies cook for you, no exceptions, and then saying thank you afterward and offering to scrub the crock pot. And at least eating gołąbki was like eating heaven. That is, if heaven was located in a coal-grimed, empty 5 and dime between what the ants called that laundromat and a Mennonite bookstore, which amazingly stocked all of Laura Ingalls Wilder's novels. So as the dryers growled and trembled, and we seemed to be slumped in plastic bucket chairs guarding the towels and undershirts, really we were running and skipping among the fresh prairie grasses in bare feet, sunbonnets hanging down our backs, Jack, the brindle bulldog, frisking over the sod house as Pa's fiddle sang the tale of the wild plains, as the dryer whipped the sopped blankets our tight-lipped mother had unpinched from the line, poked savagely through the wringer in the basement, hauled into town in the trunk of the pie-eyed Plymouth our father had once upon a time bought brand new, making damn sure Uncle Boy had nothing to do with it. 4 doors, a miracle of convenience, and even an AM radio pulsing disco under the fog-lit sky, under the wet shriek of the mill whistle, and oh, those gołąbki, we ate them, and they were a heaven, just as sloppy and leaking as ours. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. A reminder that you can come to the same place at the same time tomorrow night to hear the Writing Intensive faculty at the Frost Place Conference on Poetry and Teaching. Teresa Carson will be reading then. Have a wonderful evening.